Space Moth Lunar Edition is a reworked version of Space Moth DX, 1cc Games' first shmup, which released on Steam about 5 years ago. Now brought to Switch with Chorus Worldwide, who kindly supplied my copy, I was expecting this to be basically Space Moth DX with a few little tweaks here and there, but nothing too major. However, what we actually have on our hands here is something that, such are the breadth of changes that have been made, it's almost bordering on being a new game. I played Space Moth DX on Steam and it was a good game. I was pleased it was coming to Switch, but the changes here not just make this Lunar Edition significantly different from the original, but a significant improvement on it. And even in amongst all the classic shmups we've been seeing recently, Space Moth Lunar Edition does more than enough to be well worthy of your time and attention. Almost everything in the game has been reworked. The visuals, the music, the scoring, the bullet patterns, and even the game's most central gameplay mechanics. With its bug theme, comparisons with Cave's Mushihime-sama are always going to be inevitable, and Space Moth does employ the classic Cave style of weaker, wider shot with quicker movement, and narrower focus shot with slower movement as its two main forms of attack, alongside a small player hitbox. You also have a stock of screen clearing bombs, and these even arc downwards in a similar fashion to the way Reiko's do in Cave's masterpiece. However, even in its initial release, Space Moth was always more than just a simple imitation of its inspiration, and it employs a rather interesting soul drain system that really sets it apart. When using your rapid shot, larger enemies will have their souls drained, leaving them drained of colour. Once in this soul drained form, if you then use your focus shot to finish them off, you'll get a points bonus. Be warned though, soul drained enemies become more aggressive and will fire off additional bullets. You can see them here in pink with regular bullets being blue. This makes for a nice little risk reward system for players going for score, while also offering beginners or those looking just to survive the opportunity to essentially keep the game on a lower difficulty by not soul draining any enemies. The original game also offered an assortment of random pickups around each stage to be collected for points, and these are retained here, although they are now hidden behind white sparkles and have to be shot with your focus shot to be uncovered. Now the soul drain system already made for a pretty engaging time in and of itself, but Space Moth Lunar Edition has added a further string to its bow in the form of a new mechanic called Skull Mode. Now, Rapid Shot does not just drain enemies of their souls, it also powers up your Moth's Skull Mode functionality. This is indicated by a circle that gradually expands out from your hitbox. Activate Skull Mode and enemy bullets that enter inside your skull circle will be converted to skulls and absorbed to increase your multiplier, and equally importantly, you just won't be killed by them, although you can still be killed by touching enemies in this state. Also, the larger the circle when you initiate Skull Mode, the longer you stay in this mode as the circle gradually decreases in size after activation, and also the larger the skulls enemy bullets are converted into. An interesting little wrinkle here is that the bonus items contribute to your skull circle, even when Skull Mode is already activated. This means that once you know the stages, you can time your activation of Skull Mode so that a bonus item is available as it's running out, allowing you to prolong your stay in this state and keep that multiplier ticking up. Your multiplier can be increased up to a times 24, and really comes into play if you can keep it up at that number when defeating the stage end boss with a kill score of roughly 10 to 20,000, potentially being brought up to 1/4 to nearly 500,000. In a game where most players are probably going to be hitting scores in the middle single digit millions, that is a pretty hefty reward. Bombing, by the way, will drop your multiplier, but it will also convert all enemy bullets on screen into red skulls, and can, if used smartly, result in pretty massive bonuses that may make the multiplier sacrifice worthwhile, especially if you're not confident of surviving a particular boss unscathed, since taking a hit reduces your multiplier to 0. Now when I first started playing, I was worried it was going to be difficult to notice when enemies, who are usually in the top third of the screen, had become soul drained while also keeping an eye on the skull circle around your moth, which is usually going to be in the bottom third of the screen, while also tracking the bullet patterns through the middle third of the screen. However, the game uses very clear sound effects to let you know when enemies are in their soul drain state, as well as to alert you to when your skull circle reaches the minimum size for activation. I also found the more I played, the more you just get a feel for how much rapid fire each enemy can take before you want to switch shots. The way the stages are structured with their mix of smaller popcorn enemies and larger enemies you can soul drain also gives the game a nice natural flow that means you'll quickly find yourself becoming very aware of where and when is best to activate skull mode rather than relying on spur of the moment decisions. As you can probably tell from this footage, Space Moth is, just like 1cc Games' other Switch release Star Hunter DX, very much a Danmaku. This might look off-putting for beginners, but the skull mode and the fact you don't have to aggravate the enemies with soul drain if you don't want to, mean it should still be approachable enough for most players. The game also offers 3 continues, meaning you can't just credit feed to the end, while still being relatively generous. I like this as it does make beating the game at all some sort of achievement, albeit one that most people should be able to complete with a little practice. Another change for this version, by the way, is that a second moth is available from the start, with this being, I felt, more of an expert ship, utilising as it does options that follow your movement instead of a wide shot, and a skull circle that stays where it is after activation, allowing you to move outside its range. The game also offers an internal achievement system to add longevity. Collecting certain numbers of the game's bonus items accounts for a couple of these achievements, but I feel like a trick was missed slightly here by not simply giving these their own little gallery where they'd appear after being collected, especially since they really do make for a very random assortment ranging from fried eggs to witches on broomsticks. One other little miss in the options I felt was that remapping in-game controls also remaps the menu buttons at the same time. I've played quite a few shmups that do this, and I never usually like it that much. Remapping controls, of course, is great and should be a genre standard, but it's hard to imagine anyone not wanting confirm and back to be changed from A and B. I did also find one small bug, other than the hundreds attacking you in the game, a bug that causes the game to skip stages, of which there are 5 by the way, if you restart beyond the first stage. But that's relatively minor and shouldn't really affect your enjoyment too much, although it could screw a little with your leaderboard since it's easier to hit bigger numbers on the latter stages. There are scoreboards, of course, but these are unfortunately local only. The game does have a very decent suite of practice options, as well as solid visual options like tatty mode, scan lines, and wallpapers. Something I really like here is that the wallpapers for tatty mode are different from the regular ones and tailored to a vertical orientation. They also have little coin slots, including a 20p per go UK example, which I found a really nice little touch. One other thing to mention here is that the screen for Space Moth really is properly designed for vertical play, with a very narrow width that makes it fit and look great when played on a rotated TV or in a flip grip. The flip side of this is that in regular horizontal mode, especially when playing handheld, the playing screen really is pretty small. However, personally, I prefer this to the alternative, as, like I said, played vertically it looks absolutely fantastic. On the topic of looks, I mentioned the visuals have been reworked for this edition, and in particular they've been given a more nocturnal theme that's a great improvement on the original. That said, visuals were, I felt, the weakest part of Space Moth DX, and that probably remains true here. The theme is cool, the colours look great, and the most important aspects like visibility are handled really well, but I still feel things can look a little flat at times, and certain things like the Stage 5 haunted house, for me, can have a little too much of an amateurish kids crayon drawing vibe to them. That said, there are fantastic moments here too, like the way Stage 1 darkens as you progress, or the way the bullets fired by the toadstools resemble drifting clouds of spores. Audio I have nothing but praise for. I always feel music is very subjective, but this is just the type of soundtrack that I really love. Each stage's music is quite unique, with stage 4 for example having a darker edge that reminded me of Animals era Pink Floyd, while still creating a consistent atmosphere. That atmosphere starting right from the initial menu, where the chirruping of insects is all you hear initially, before ambient music gradually begins to fade in. Sound effects are, as mentioned, used to good practical effect in-game. And some, like the start menu effect, do sound reused from Star Hunter, but I actually quite like this, as even after only 2 games, there's already a kind of identity emerging that says this is a 1cc Games release. And that's one of my favourite things here. Space Moth Lunar Edition shares a lot with Star Hunter DX, while also being completely different in so many ways. I know that 1cc Games have developed their own bullet system, and I really hope it's going to allow them to continue putting out games and refining upon their formula, as this is an excellent shmup that, when taken together with the equally excellent Star Hunter DX, suggests a studio who really know what they're doing. I would give Space Moth Lunar Edition an 8.5 out of 10, and I really hope it does not get lost in the sea of more well-known releases that we've been seeing lately, as it really deserves a place alongside them on your Switch. So let us know your thoughts on this version or the Steam version if you've played it, and thanks very much for watching. See you next time. Cheers.
Mm.